Okay, hello. Good morning here in Costa Rica. Good morning there in Mexico. And good morning, good afternoon in everywhere you are going to pay attention to this interview. So it's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you. And now, today we're going to have our interview number 10. Okay, so we're going to be discussing about some important contents related to education, and this interview will be about education in Mexico. So for today, we have a special guest from Mexico. So it's a pleasure for me to be here with her. So let me introduce her a little bit. Also, remember that feel free to comment in the chat, post your comments on Facebook. And if you have a question, so let us know if you want to know something, or maybe you want to be clear about one specific content or topic related to education. So that will be great for us to help you. And this is for future teachers, for teachers that now are working for an institute or different institutions. And that will be great to be updated in terms of education. Okay, so as I said before, so we have a special guest today, and let me introduce her. So we are going to have Raquel Cibrián. Is an educator with 20 years of experience teaching English to students of all ages and levels. A dynamic and engaging instructor, Raquel has shared her expertise globally, presenting workshops in countries such as Egypt, Denmark, the USA, Mexico, Nicaragua, and Panama. Her academic pursuits have taken her to renowned institutions like Arizona State University, Oregon State University, and the University of Guelph, and the University of Southampton in England. With a wealth of knowledge and international exposure, Raquel continues to inspire and empower students in the field of English language instruction. Okay, so it's a pleasure for me to welcome teacher Raquel. Okay, Raquel, if you want to share a couple of words with the audience, feel free to do it.
Hello.
Hello. So
Hey.
if you want to share a couple of words before to start
Ah,
with the interview.
yeah. I'm so pleased to be here, so we can share some experiences that as teachers we have. All right. Thank you.
Okay, it's always a pleasure to share with teachers with different countries. Okay, for example, we have been interviewing teachers from Egypt, Indonesia, Mexico, Nicaragua, so different countries around the world, and that's important to have those experiences, and we can learn, and what we can learn from those experiences, and those also from those teachers, what they do every single day to improve their methodology and also their classes. Okay, so it's always important to talk about education. Okay, so we're going to talk about some important details, okay, about education. So of course related to what teachers in Mexico face. So it goes to question number one. It says, let's talk about the main challenges. Okay, so what are the main challenges? Okay, teachers facing Mexico nowadays.
Mm, I consider that maybe it's not only in Mexico. Maybe in another country, if they hear this, they will say, "Ah, we are facing the same situation." But I think it's that we are working with uh, some students who bring new ideas, new ways to see life, new ways to understand everything, new ways to learn. And maybe we are using the same old fashioned strategies, the ones were from where we were students. So maybe that's the challenge. We have to adapt, to be adaptive to new strategies, to be open to new uh, things, or activities we can use in class. That may be what I think, that maybe many of us or teachers, we don't want to jump to this other side with technology.
Yeah, actually, that's true. So we need to be updated, and we need to be updated every day. Okay, so every day education changes, and we need to find a way to try to make our classes more interactive for our students. Okay, so we cannot just think that my way to teach is the correct one. So I need to improve, and I need to look for strategies and methods that I can implement in my classes. Okay, and that's something true. Some teachers think that they don't have to be updated, or they don't have time to use different apps or search information related to technology. And now we have a artificial intelligence, so that's great if people know how to use it in a correct way, right? And we can talk about it later, but that's how it works. Okay, so we need to look for strategies to overcome those challenges in terms of education. Okay, so and remember that we have different levels of students in our classrooms, and that's important to adapt our class to each level of those students. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to our next content, which is about uh, what about remote learning, and what about technology implemented or adapted to changes in Mexico in the educational system.
We're still working on that process because actually the country is trying to implement technology in all the schools, but it's like a slow process. Not all schools have the even internet. They don't have it sometimes, so it's
Mhm.
quite difficult. But it's doing this job. Yeah, the government, I think, it's doing the job of implementing new things, new technology in schools.
Okay, yeah, and that's true. It depends on rural areas.
Can you
Okay,
hear me? I
yeah, I
think.
can hear you. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I can hear you. That's okay. Uh-huh. Can you hear me now? Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Now it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I hear you. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay. I think I lost the connection, but
Okay. Can you hear me now?
it says it's reconnecting. Uh-huh.
Okay, okay. That's okay. No worries.
Thanks.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. No worries. That happens, and that's something we have to deal with in our daily classes. Okay, with technology. I was saying that it depends on the place. If, for example, some places or some institutions or high schools or primary schools don't have internet connection, okay, and that's something we have to deal with. So we need to adapt our classes to that. So in our case, I prefer, for example, to have a flat screen and also a projector, internet connection, so and I can implement technology in my classes. But sometimes it's kind of difficult. For example, in my case, there are some cases that I don't have even a classroom to have my classes. So I have to go there under a tree or just take my group and go there. So I need to adapt to that. I need to teach something, but that's our challenge nowadays. Okay, so maybe we don't have the same let's say, a structure or buildings, okay, to teach our classes or classrooms, but we need to do something to overcome those situations. Okay, and now what about, for example, what about you? How do you integrate technology into your classes? Or what about teachers? Okay, so we know we already have problems with technology, but imagine that we have a internet connection, so we have projectors, we have devices. So how can teachers effectively integrate technology in?
Mhm. All right. So we are having a scenario where we have everything, right? So that's the perfect thing. So all the time, the first thing we need to understand that we cannot fight against the idea that students have phones, okay, that smartphones that they can have so many apps that we can use in class, so we can take advantage of that. So the first thing I did at the beginning, at the very beginning, was to use the phone, because at schools it is forbidden to use it in class. So we said no, we are going to use it, but we are going to use it following these steps, these instructions, and they can now be like not in a fight with the class, like I cannot do this, I cannot do that, so they can use it. We are going to be friends with technology, so we can use it. I started using phones, so we can now uh, download apps where we can use these activities, or I send the activity through the phone so we can use it in class. So it's gonna be maybe at the beginning difficult, because some schools they don't allow to the phone to in class. So but it's a good idea, I think.
Okay, in our case, well, phones are
I
allowed.
think
Actually, that's not
I'm
part
having trouble
of.
with internet. So
Okay, let me know when you can hear me. Can you hear me
yeah,
now?
yeah.
Okay, okay, good. Now, I was telling you that, well, cell phones are allowed. Okay, so they are not like a school supplies, but most of students have their cell phones. Okay, and in my case, I try to take advantage of it. So if you have your cell phone, if you want to use it, so let's work using this app or this website. For example, I like to use a Nearput. Nearput is amazing. I have no idea if you know about Nearput, but you can join to a Nearput class, and also your students can join by using a device. It can be a laptop, or it can be a tablet, or even a cell phone if they want to join the class, and it allows them to be concentrated, be focused on the activity, and they want to participate, they want to win, and that's part of cooperative learning. So they want to win, they want to do different activities, but part of as if we are implementing cooperative learning, so it doesn't mean that we're going to have a winner. All of them are already winners. Okay,
Yeah,
why? Because they are
and
participating.
it also has to do with teachers creativity, imagination, because you can use so many when you ask me about one activity, in my mind there are so many, so it depends on the teacher's creativity, imagination, combine different activities so they can do uh, the one they need, the one it's perfect for this class. Maybe that one is not the one that is gonna fit this another class, but
And that's how it works. Okay, for sure. Okay, and what about? Okay, let's talk about your experience. Okay, so what advice would you give to teachers who feel overwhelmed by digital tools?
I think they have to take it like one at a time. So you need to get familiarized with one app at a time. So, or one tool at a time. So don't try to learn everything at the same time. Don't try to use them all together in a class. No, 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 no. It's gonna be one at a time. You learn how to use it, you get familiar to it, and then you can go to another one. So you will be implementing new strategies, new activities, new tools to your class. And for students, it's gonna be like a new class every day. So it's gonna be different. Now they are gonna be like so um so I think for students also this is a good thing, because they all the time the teacher comes and says, open your book on page 20, next class open your book on page 21. So that's not going to be engaging for students. You are not going to get their attention. So every time we use a new tool in class, it's going to be something new for our students.
Great. Now, in my opinion, what I would say in my book, okay, I would say that it's important to collaborate among teachers. Okay, so if I know a tool, so I can have like a workshop and I can teach how to use it. And that will be great for all teachers. Why? Because we don't have time to surf the net, to look for apps, or maybe you know apps, but you don't have time to work with them. Now, as you said before, so you can work on one and you can know how it works and you can use it perfectly. And when you know how to use that app perfectly, so you can teach others to use it. And that's part of collaboration among teachers. Now, training is very important. So in my case, I have been doing some training for teachers in my region. Okay, for example, using Nearpod. They didn't know about Nearpod. If they knew about Nearpod, they learned many things that they didn't know at that moment. Because we can implement, for example, Kahoot. So Kahoot is already used for many teachers, but Kahoot has been updated. So in Kahoot has many interesting ways to use it, not only as a game, not only using questions and who is going to be the winner. So you have many options, but you need to take your time to learn how to use that app. So we can talk about Educa Play, we can talk about Kahoot, we can talk about Nearpod, and you can mention a lot of them. But the most important is training. Okay, so we need to take the time to have that part. For example, in my high school or in my region, okay, teachers, well, we need to have that time or that space to talk about things that can help us to improve our classes as a group in the region. And that's why we attend, I say you and me, we attend conferences, because we want to be updated in terms of how to use technology nowadays, because there are different ways that we can implement. For example, I met you in Egypt, okay, and actually that was amazing to meet you in Egypt in that conference, and we were sharing the same interesting about improving education, and you were being a presenting, for example, and I was a presenting as well, and it was amazing to have this kind of experiences. Okay, and actually that's great to for teachers to try to be updated in terms of
Oh, I
education.
cannot
Okay.
hear you.
Okay, what
Can you
about
hear me?
now? Let me know if you can hear me. I can hear you now. I hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I cannot hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Uh-huh. I can hear you. So let's wait a couple of seconds. Okay, what about now? Can you hear me?
Okay.
Now. Okay, good. Okay. So let's move on to so we have this one. What about uh, now we have been talking about technology, okay? So and we agree that we have to implement technology in our classes. But what about artificial intelligence? Now, my question is, how do you see the role of teachers evolving with integration of AI and other technologies in the class?
Maybe teachers are afraid of, oh, if I start using this new intelligence, it's going to be like bad for me because maybe they later want to substitute teachers. But I don't think that it's going to happen because always education it's related to be closer to the student, to be that part that it's going to be the emotional, the company there, the I don't think that it's going to be like something bad for us. It's going to be something that we can use. Definitely, we have to use it. And it's going to be because our students are going to be, if these students aren't familiar to it now, imagine that the next ones, next generations we will have, it definitely we have to be in there too. But I think at the moment, some of them are not so affected to use it in class, but definitely we have to include it in a moment. Sooner or later, we have to use it.
Yeah, and actually, the problem, as I see it, is that students, are implementing AI without supervision. So they are using it, and they have no idea how to use it in a correct way, and that's a problem because when they get to university, when they get to higher levels, so probably they are going to use it, but not in a correct way, because I can use it to ask questions to get information, not to have my work done. Okay, for example, or my homework done, and that can be
Yes.
a problem that we are facing nowadays. But for sure, we need to talk about it, and that's why training on how to use it in a correct way will be always important for kids, okay, and also for teachers, okay, to know that part. And it can help you a lot as a teacher if you want to plan your classes, so you can even have a variety of technologies, strategies to implement in your class, thanks to AI. And that's great. Why? Because you can make images, you can create stories, you can create even songs and lyrics, okay? And you can have a song related to one specific content, okay? For example, if you want to talk about pollution, so you can have your own song, and even you can play the music you want with your song, and you can just ask students to fill the blanks or complete the song, or maybe if you want to make a song related to regular and irregular verbs, so that's great to use that. So there are many ways that we can make our classes more interactive for our students, okay, for sure, using AI. Okay.
Yeah. Also, it's the thing we mentioned before is it has to do with imagination, right? Because the AI is gonna work for me, right? So my idea, it's gonna be there, so it's gonna work for me. It depends how you use it, what you want to do with it.
And that's why, for example, at university, when I teach my students to work on a workshop, or when I ask my students to work on a workshop related to literature or related to a chapter from one reading, so it's important to bring up bring out imagination, creativity. Okay, why? Because if you have an idea about an activity you can implement based on your content, well, I like the activity. Maybe I don't like the way it was developed, but I can adapt it in the way, or to a way I really like to do in my class. So maybe it doesn't work with this content, but I think it could be better with this content if I implement it in a different way. So, and I take that idea that it was amazing and I adapt it to what I need in my class according to the level of my students. For example, playing with kids. So I can play with adults as well. I can play it with teenagers as well. But I have to adapt those activities to the level of my students.
Sure.
Okay,
Definitely.
good. Okay, now, and so then we have let's talk about a technology based activity. Okay, so can you share an example of a technology based activity that increased student participation, or maybe an activity you have been working in your classes, or you have been teaching to teachers or students or future teachers?
Yeah. Actually, with my students, we were trying to explain some very detailed topics. So they require an explanation, not just to read it or just to come forward. You have to read it. No, no, it's just you have to explain it. So I told them that first they had to read and understand the idea about the topic. After that, they would have to explain that to the class, but in a different way. I mean, not just uh, go here to the front and explain, oh, this is that and that. So I was surprised that they were the ones where they say, oh, teacher, we use the AI and we ask to create how tell us how we can explain this. So the class was amazing, amazing. So because I told them, you are going to use your imagination, you have to explain it, but in a way that you think your classmates are going to get it as the way you would like to be explained. So that's what. And then after that, they they love it. They love it, and all the topics, this very specific topics, were clear for them because we are using the tools that they are using at home every day. So we cannot be against these tools. We can include them in class, every class.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's great. That's a good advice how to, and a good example. Okay, how to work on a technology-based activity. Okay, and what about future teachers? Okay,
Can you
so
hear me?
yes, I can hear you. I can hear you perfectly. Let's wait a couple of minutes. I can hear you. Yeah, when you talk, I can hear you. Maybe there is a delay. Now, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Now can.
Okay. Okay, good. Now, when you talk, I can hear you. I don't know
Oh,
why. Maybe there's a delay. Yes, when you say, "Can you hear me?" Yes, I can. I can
oh,
hear you.
right,
I
right.
don't know what's happening. Okay, so let's continue. It says, so what about a future teachers? Okay, and what are some effective strategies? Okay, so you can share to for mentoring future teachers. Okay, so what advices you can give to them for
You
future teachers?
usually the things I mentioned in my workshops are that they have to be open. They have to be open to new ideas because in my experience, some of my teachers they don't like to be active, you know. It also depends on the way we learn, the process we went through when we were students. But now we need to be open to that. We cannot be teaching the same way we used to, right? Because we need to be including. So they need to be open, and they need to understand and learn new strategies. Then they have to use their imagination. Definitely. That's something I always mention. You have to use your imagination. You have to create your own activities, not only to follow, like, step number one, you have to do this. Step number two, you have to continue with that. You can mix and add new tools every day, every class. They have to understand that students are, it's a different world. Each student is a different world we have in class, so we have to manage all these worlds together. So it's, so that's why teaching is an interesting activity.
Yeah,
It's a
actually,
challenge every
well,
class.
yesterday I was teaching reading comprehension number two, and at the end I took time to talk about some important things or advices that students have to know in order to have their future classes. Okay, in primary school. Now, teacher, what do you recommend for primary school teachers? I recommend extra activities. Okay, why? Because when you go to primary school, well, it's a little bit different than a high school. So you need to be in charge of a large classes. So I'm talking about 30 students, 25 students, okay, in one class. Okay, so and that's hard to teach in that situation, but you need to find a way to keep those students busy. Now, I gave them an example. Imagine that you have been working on your lesson your whole weekend, okay? Saturday, Sunday, Saturday in the morning, Saturday at night, okay? And when you start giving them the material and pasting everything in the classroom to make it beautiful for your students, and imagine a student gets close to you and tells you, okay, teacher, I don't like this. What a boring class that you are teaching me. So imagine how frustrated can be that situation if you have been working on that class your whole weekend. Okay, so and that can be a problem. So that's why you need extra activities. Why? Because if you have an activity and you pay attention to how your students are behaving and how they are acting towards your activity, so you know if you need to keep it or you need to stop that activity and move on to the next one, because you need to understand that from your students. So it's a lie if a person says, okay, so you need 5 activities to develop a class. So you can talk about warm up. So let's talk about 6: presentation, warm up, pre, while, and post, and finally consolidation. So maybe those could be like the main steps of a class, but we know depends on the activity, so that students are not going to like it, and you need to adapt your classes to your students. Okay, and that's part of that. It doesn't mean that you are a good teacher or a bad teacher. The problem is that what kind of activities you are going to give to your students. For example, in reading comprehension, so you cannot read just for reading. You need a purpose for reading. Okay, so you cannot ask your students, okay, here you have this text and there you have 10 questions and just work. No, because we need a purpose. Maybe I want them to know about vocabulary. Maybe I want them to know about a regular and irregular verbs. Okay, so that can be very useful. And maybe I already had a pre-activity. For example, it can be a brainstorming or activating prior knowledge related to the content. Okay, so that could be very important before to start reading a text just for reading. Okay, so and actually there are some important tips that we can share with future teachers.
Yeah, because there's no like a perfect recipe to make a class, to create the perfect class. No, 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 because every class we mentioned before, it's gonna depend. Every class is different, different people in there, different ideas. So maybe the same activity is not going to work the same in another class. Look, for one class is going to be perfect. You're so excited. Why? The class I designed during the weekend. Wow, awesome. But for next class, with the new students, it's not going to work, and you don't understand why. It's because they have different interests and different ideas, different routines, different, I don't know, motivations. So we need to use creativity, imagination to form and adapt. Okay, this is not working. I have to change it. I have to move on and do this another thing. Okay, you at the end you start like understanding the class.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and then and that's how you're going to improve every day because your experience will let you know to do that, and that is something you learned while you are working. Okay, good. Now, let's talk about culture. Okay, so how important culture is nowadays when teaching English. Okay, so we are with technology, we can investigate and we can search for information from different countries and regions. Okay, but why to go so far? So we can investigate even in our country. And for example, I want to know about Mexico. I want to know about Egypt. For sure, they have a amazing ancient history. Okay, and also places. But also there is something amazing in our country. Okay, so we can investigate about regions. So we know it's Costa Rica, but its region or its province, okay, as they are called here in Costa Rica, for example, Alajuela, Guanacaste, and they have their own culture, and it's very important. And actually for me, that's a good topic to teach in our classes. Okay, why? Because it allows to give a lot of vocabulary and a lot of information. And imagine that you can make oral presentations related to different regions in Costa Rica, and that's what I want in this part. Okay, for example, in your case, how do you promote a cultural relevance? Okay, when training teachers or when teaching classes, talking about different regions in Mexico and also different contexts.
We usually work with the things we are familiar with. Example about the places and things we use every day. But we already know that it's going to be different if I'm as a teacher teaching students here in the north of Mexico. It's going to be different if I go to the south and I want to teach the same way, the same things. It's not going to work. It's going to be different because those students, they have a different environment, so they are not going to be familiar with the words I'm going to use, with the places I'm going to mention. And when we talk about teachers, usually teachers sometimes, if you come from a very specific context, you want to implement it in the class, in the classroom, and they don't understand why that doesn't work, because we have to use it. When I'm working with teachers, I always mention you have to use vocabulary and places, everything that sounds familiar to the students, right? To students. Even you also as a teacher, when we travel to different countries, it's because we want to bring this information to our students, because now you can mention stories and experiences about those places that they know are real. It's true, so they can have a better idea about how the world outside this very specific country is working, what uh, people in there do, what they eat, how they live, all the activities they like to do. So it's, and that for students when they want to know about outside the country, it's very engaging.
Actually, it's pretty cool. For example, in my case, when I travel abroad, I like to sit in the park on a bench, just paying attention to how people behave in that country, in that place. Okay, so, and I learn a lot from that. When we were in Egypt, actually, it was amazing as well. I took a couple of days to go to the pyramids and also to visit different places, for example, museums, and it was amazing to take a look at those images and those places and also ancient objects. Why? Because you knew, in my case, I knew that from high school classes in social studies. Okay. For example, talking about the Nile River. Okay. So it was amazing to be there. So this is the Nile River, the one I have been reading during my high school, and now I am here near the Nile River, and it was amazing for me that part, and also sharing the experience, and also learning a lot from different teachers, and actually uh, that's amazing. Now you were saying something very important, and I would use just one word: contextualizing. Okay, so we need to contextualize the content to our students. Okay, so it depends on the region. So we need to teach this, but we need to adapt it according to what they need. For example, if I go to a rural area, I cannot imagine, or I cannot work with a situation at the airport if they don't have an experience there. Okay, so they cannot imagine what kind of things you need to do. For example, the check-in and your packages and your luggage, and then you need to move there and your passport. So, and they don't even have a ID card. So it can be difficult for them to understand that part. So contextualizing, it's very important in that case. Okay, and what about burnout? Okay, what role does technology play in supporting teachers' well-being and reducing burnout?
I cannot hear you.
Okay, so let's
uh,
wait a couple of minutes. What about now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Now, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yes, it's here. We are here now. Hello, hello, hello. Hello. I can hear you. Actually, that's good. Hello, hello, hello.
oh, I'm
Hello.
sorry, I cannot hear you.
Hello, hello. What about now? Can you hear me?
I'm
Hello,
so
hello.
Hello, I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. Could you repeat the question, please?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, 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 perfectly.
Okay, I know how it works, so we need to wait a couple of seconds, okay? Okay, good. The question is about burnout, okay? So what role does technology play in supporting teachers' well-being and reducing burnout?
As you mentioned, it's, if we if we know how to use technology, it's gonna help us. Definitely, it's gonna help us, because if you have to elaborate or you have to create an activity or exams, evaluate, to grade students, you you can be helped by this technology, and it's gonna definitely you will be relieved, right? Because you know how to use it for you, that works for you, right? But if sometimes we reject the use of technology, or we are afraid of learning because we don't know how to use it, we are doing things that maybe that tool could do for me, so I can save time. Okay. Don't.
Mhm. Yeah, and actually we can make a different class just implementing tools. For example, if you know how a tool works and you know just internet is required, so you cannot. You're not going to spend your Saturday or your Sunday working on that because you already have the activity here and you already planned the activity for the following week, and that could be uh, how a good way to save time for teaching classes.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a good way to avoid burnout. Okay, what about soft skills? Okay, how do you incorporate soft skills such as communication and adaptability into teacher training programs?
I think those soft skills, they have to do with in personal life, how we were educated and during your lifetime. Because sometimes it's not that you don't want to, it's because we didn't learn during our childhood how to communicate with others, how to listen to others, how to
Mm-hmm.
be with others. So I think that's a complicated process, because you cannot just be there with the teachers, and you cannot tell them, oh, it's because you're not good at communication. Oh, it's this is not working because you're not good at. No, we they have to learn that by seeing this from you. If you know how to get a good communication with your teachers, with your students, they can see that, so they can learn it from you. But you don't need to tell them, oh, you are going to do it this way or this way. Every time this student says that, or this other teacher mentions this, you have to do it like this. It's because they see and they learn how to communicate with others through observing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. Just to remember, soft skills are personal attributes, okay, or interpersonal abilities. Actually, we were talking about communication, we were talking about adaptability, but also we can talk about teamwork, we can talk about problem solving, we can talk about leadership, we can talk about emotional intelligence, we can talk about time management. Okay, it doesn't matter if we are thinking about being a teacher, okay, so saving time, or in your life, okay, so time management. So we have time for working, we have time for our activities or free time activities, conflict resolution, creativity, and also work ethic, okay, which is going to be very important, and they are part of soft skills. And just to wrap up our interview, okay, this is going to be the last part. And it says, what inspires you most in your role as a teacher, trainer, and coordinator?
mm, ah, I think all of us, when we were deciding, like, what am I gonna do, what am I going to study when we finish high school, and you wanted to specialize, you want to take a major in something. I think, mm, it has definitely, it has to do with what you want to do, what you do to feel happy. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be easy. Definitely not like that easy. But you learn. and you feel a motivation for learning because you like it, because definitely you like it. Why do you want to be like grading exams like 200, 300 exams every weekend? Because you like it. Definitely you have a purpose, a motivation, because you want to see your students learning. And I think that all the time when I see my students like, oh teacher, I got it, I now I and we can start like a conversation in English, and I think, oh, this is, you know, this is working. What I do is working for others. So that's, I think that's the reason, because it's something you like. It's easy. I love it. It's just that.
It's part of you. Simple words. Okay. So you love it. You really like what you do. And that's exactly what we do and what we love to do. Okay. So
Uh-huh.
great. Amazing. And so let me say hello to my dear friend Rania from Greece. Okay, actually, she was part of this amazing interviews, actually, the previous one. So, hello, Rania from Greece, and thanks for your comment. Okay, and so let me just, before wrapping up this session, so it was amazing to share with you your experiences and everything related to education in your classes and also as a trainer and education in Mexico. So it was amazing for me to share with you, and I hope to see you next time, maybe talking about one strategy or one method or maybe one app that we can teach future teachers to implement in their classes.
Sure, sure. I really appreciate this opportunity uh, to collaborate. Hopefully, it's not going to be the last one. As you mentioned, we can do many activities together. We can have, and we can show to even our students, right? Like a class, a demo. That would be great for me.
And that's amazing, and that allows future teachers to learn, and also people who want to practice their English. That's a great opportunity as well. I was thinking about inviting more people in one session, so that would be great if you join us, and maybe two or three more teachers from Nigeria, Cameroon, okay, Egypt, okay, the ones we know, and that would be great to have that conversation, but maybe in the future.
Sure, perfect. That'd be awesome. Great, great, great. Great idea.
So thank you very much, and see you then. Bye bye.